Hey gang, Mocha Boy here. Welcome back, and thanks for tuning back in. So yeah, I thought I would take a moment to address some of the most recent announcements from Supercell, specifically around their quote-unquote commitment to fair play, and this ongoing initiative that they're going to be launching to restore some sort of balance, not to just Clash of Clans, but to their entire suite of games. And I have to tell you, if you if you've been a long time subscriber, thanks for coming along for the ride. If you're just finding us now, um, you should know that there's a long and drawn out story behind how we even got here. And I consider myself in a pretty unique position, to have been able to witness, all of the significant milestones in that story. And one of those things that I did want to bring to your attention was this, and kind of where it all started. If the name Regiven doesn't mean anything to you, if it doesn't ring a bell, Regiven was one of the original leaders of Reddit Troopers, and this was before things kind of took a turn for the weird, and the rise of third-party apps started to come onto the scene. He did his best to try to to try to address this issue of rampant cheating in the game, and he did this. This was this petition's dated from February of 2015, and it took all the time between now and between then and now, for Supercell finally to put their foot down and take a stance on where they're at. So, I mean, I know Reddit Troopers has decided to kind of go off on, kind of go off in their own direction for, for whatever reasons they've chosen. But it's interesting to see that the legacy that Regiven started so many moons ago has finally come to fruition. So I know wherever he is, I'm sure he's smirking now, even if it is something of a bittersweet thing. So yeah, and here we are. Fast forward to today, and Supercell has finally decided to go ahead and put their foot down and do something and address this problem before it gets even worse than it already is. Anyway, there's some information I wanted to share with you. I thought I would just run a couple replays in the background from our current war, and just talk to you about what's going to happen next, or what I believe is going to happen next. I sat on Supercell's forums, looking through, reading through that entire mega post of, surrounding the announcement, and I was interested to see how, how Supercell would even accomplish this, because interestingly enough, this is one of the, at least in my field of work, this is one of the things that we actually have some experience in, and that's, big data, behavioral analytics, activity profiling, things like that. Being able to take a large superset of data and then glean it for insights based on, based on users' activity. And this is an area that's absolutely fascinating to me. So I wanted to know, I wanted to see what kind of stuff was out there, at least in the gaming community. I thought I'd share some of that information here today. One of the things that was particularly interesting was a name came up that I hadn't seen before, and kind of shot me down this rabbit hole as I went to go and look for this information even further. But Nadis Lai, Nadis Lai, he is, if that name's not familiar to you, he's actually the creator of iMod, and he runs a he runs a website, where all of that information is available. And I was reading through some of his posts, and there was a post back as far as December of 2015. And the one interesting thing to note from that was one piece of information that he shared, where he stated that anyone using some mode, I think it was called Goblin Mode, was that that Supercell had developed some sort of detection algorithm to detect high frequency attacks, and to artificially insert longer and longer search times into the into that player's session. So long story short is, if you had that mode enabled, the servers were able to pick up on that, and then as your software was going through and looking for villages quickly, or attacking them quickly, it ended up making those search times even longer. Now that in and of itself is not a big deal, but what I thought was really interesting was obviously the fact that, number one, they were able to detect that activity. Now the interesting thing about all this is that people have been saying they're not going to stop modding, they're not going to stop modding. You're absolutely right. There's nothing that Supercell can do. There's no patch, there's no piece of software that can render those bots useless. But at the end of the day, it still takes a person to play this game, and they can stop the person. And that's what that's a critical thing that people are missing here. Every time you tap on the screen, all the time you spend making a decision, the decisions that you make, with how to deploy your troops, these are all things that create an activity profile. And an activity profile could look something like, this person stays online for 2 hours a day, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, they're suddenly online for 12 hours a day. This person's capable of X amount of clicks in a 5-minute time, span of time. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're capable of 200 clicks or 200 actions within the span of that same time. So what I'm trying to get at is there's software out there that can detect not whether or not there's a third-party application in the background running. All they're doing is they're gathering your activity profile. They're gathering your activity, and then they're building a profile based on that, and then making a decision as to whether or not that activity qualifies as a human person running those activities, or if it's a bot. Like especially in the case of a bot, they'll be able to search for X amount of bases in so many seconds, or whatever it is. Those are going to be easy things to pick out for the software. So again, it has nothing to do with detecting that there's third-party software running in the background. It has everything to do with scanning your activity profile and making a determination as to whether or not that's being automated. And if you want to do some interesting reading, there's a couple of things to look up. If you're a fan of RuneScape, look up just Google BotWatch, BOTWATCH. That's a piece of software that they run that allows them to scan and build, scan player activities and build these activity profiles so that a person can go in there and then make an intelligent decision about whether or not that person is doing some bot. So yeah, and I would say at this point the question on everybody's mind is where do we go from here? What do we do? Like what can we expect to see over the next few months? And I guess the way that I see this playing out, a lot of things that didn't matter before are suddenly going to matter a lot. Case in point, things like base designs and traps. Base designs and even traps in particular were more or less useless because anyone who was running a mod could see exactly where your traps were and just take steps to avoid them. They would just magically know, to attack one side of the base and not the other. So base designs are going to matter a lot again. Defenses being able to defend your base is going to matter again. And offense is still overpowered, especially with Valks where they are. But still, you actually have a chance, if players are playing on a level playing field, to be able to defend your base. If Supercell follows the same modus operandi that World of Warcraft did and Blizzard did, these things will come in waves. It'll be quiet. Because at this point we already know that at least as far as December's concerned, they've had the ability to detect these these activity profiles since as far back as December, so they know what to look for. And the people that are going to be the easiest to spot are the people who are running things like automated farming bots, the people who are running keep alive bots to stay online indefinitely. Those people, just by virtue, those will be the first people to go in the first wave. I would imagine that the system for reporting players, especially if somebody's been suspected of doing something, like the clan that we ran up against a few videos ago, where they were out in the open, they were just ghosting and glitching their attacks, and then folks like that will just get banned and permanently be out of the game. And Supercell has they've built an interesting choice architecture for players to have to navigate, and that's do you continue modding and botting, or do you B risk at the risk of losing your account that you've spent X amount of years developing and X amount of dollars developing. It's a lot of people aren't going to take that risk, and they're going to have to make the decision, as to how they want to play the game. And the big question on everybody's mind is going to be like, how far can they push, some of these third-party applications? And I don't think anyone at this point knows exactly how far they can do that, because it's not enough that they can build activity profiles, based on what you do in game as a human being versus as a bot. But software does exist, and if you look up things like the Warden software from World of Warcraft, these were client-side applications that could detect, that could scan RAM for active processes, and if certain processes were seen, to be running, then that threw up a flag, and then you were off and running. Now I'm sure the mod developers can figure out ways to obfuscate those executables. It's always going to be a cat and mouse kind of thing, but at the end of the day, you can't get around being a human versus being a bot. A bot can process so many actions per unit of time, whereas people are only capable of so many actions per unit of time, and it'll be easy to determine, at least as far as all of the available activities within the game, who is running a bot and who's running who's actually playing the game. That's not to say that it's impossible, because you build a better mousetrap, the smarter mouse will just come along, and they'll figure out ways to emulate human behavior. So it's that's not to say that it's going to completely disappear, but it's going to make it really hard for people to make the decision to use that software in the first place. And that's, I think, kind of the magic behind Supercell's choice here, and the approach that they're taking. They've flat out said we can't defeat these bots, but we can ban players, and there's a very real risk with again, the time that you've spent building up the account, the money that you've spent at building the account, for all of that to just go bye-bye, in a flash of brilliant light, and then that's two and a half years to 3 years of your life just gone in a flash over a bad decision. So again, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I'd imagine that things are going to be weird for a long while until things settle down, and people are playing the game the way that Supercell had intended all along. And at least speaking from my perspective, this has been a really bittersweet journey for me. There have been a lot of times where I quit just because there was no way to address this, and the only way to win the game was to not play. And I'm glad to see that it's taken all that time to finally get to some point of closure where Supercell's put their foot down and they've taken an active stance in addressing this. So yeah, excited to see where this story leads, and where the next chapter takes us. But until then, and again, if you've been following along, we're going to continue on with this channel for as long as there's content to put out there. But yeah, until the next episode, thanks for tuning back in.